So what is up? God, it feels so good to be back, guys. And with that being said, this is the official return of the Click Pod podcast. Once a week, we will be doing these throwback videos, and on Saturday morning, you will get a weekly review of This Week in Wrestling. That includes Raw, SmackDown, AEW. Guys, we're going to have fun going forward. Also, I think starting in February, we're going to do, for every pay-per-view on Twitch, we're gonna go ahead and do a join me where you guys just come, hang out, we watch the pay-per-view together. Obviously not streaming through the Twitch feed because the last thing I need is anything with copyright issues. And we will just go ahead and discuss and just make it a free-for-all. But with that being said, man, I'm really happy Nick brought this up. So moving forward, we're gonna make this a weekly series. It will be called What Happened on, and in this date, May 2nd, 1992, the edition of WWF Superstars. And I gotta say, guys, when I first threw this on, instant class back. I mean, the very first thing you get is a green screen footage of the crowd that's in attendance when they did the taping. And then you have Curt Hennig, RIP, the man, Mr. Perfect, on commentary with Vince McMahon. It was super exciting to see that. And then from there, it only gets better. So we kick off the show with the Big Boss Man versus Mark Roberts. One thing I think people always forget about the Big Boss Man is the hustle this big boy had. And I don't mean big boy as he was the biggest guy out there. He was just a bigger fella. But with that being said, man, you just see the Boss Man running with the nightstick all the way, sliding into the ring, looks smooth as day. Soon as he gets in there, very quick match against Mark Roberts, but that's what I loved about the WWE from back in the day. To see an actual superstar on superstar matchup was such a huge thing. Typically on the weekly show, you would see a superstar versus a jobber to build the dominance, and then at the pay-per-views, that's where you would get the payoff. But in this case, man, I mean, it's a really quick match. About minute 38 to 2 minutes long. We get Big Boss Man comes in, starts it off with the lariat with a big boss elbow, then hits a few more moves. Then we get the Big Boss Man slam. I mean, that's simple with a one finger cover. And watching it, I'm like, damn, that's what I feel like's missing. Those truly arrogant covers that we used to get. And with the one finger cover, Boss Man was successful, walks away victorious right after or during the match. And this is another thing I loved about classic WWE. During the match, they would actually have the promo going off in the side. So while Big Boss Man's wrestling, we're watching a little promo he shot earlier in the day. And he's talking about a convict. This convict I portrayed to be Nails. But it's exciting. As we go on with this, we'll discover more and more with every week that passes. Then we go to a promo of the Berserker with Mr. Fuji, and he's talking to The Undertaker. But before we actually get into the promo, it goes and shows highlights from last week's Superstars. And it's crazy because I always forget, like, I always remember the Berserker's persona, like what he looked like, his in-ring gear, everything like that. And I remember the shield, but the one thing that always slipped my mind is the sword that he used to carry with him. And it's crazy, because when they cut back to the highlights, you see him hit The Undertaker in the back with the sword. But then, after he hits The Undertaker in the back with the sword, he goes to stab The Undertaker. Thank God The Undertaker rolls out of the way, and it is just stuck right in the middle of the ring mat. And I'm just thinking, like, was that a legit sword? If that would have actually connected with the Taker, could we have seen a dead Taker on tape television? That would have been absolutely nuts. But I mean, that's just one of those things that just takes you back to the vintage WWE. Well, we're just going to refer to it as the WWF because, I mean, let's be honest. At that time, that's exactly what it was. So, after that, we transition into a new match. The match is Red Tyler versus Papa Shango. For me, this was the first match that really gave me that childlike again feeling. I'll never forget, while watching it, Papa Shango's doing his entrance to the ring, and it puts the camera on this little boy's face. And this little boy's face, I don't want to say it was sheer terror, but you could tell he was terrified by what Papa Shango was bringing to the ring. And for me, that was just absolutely crazy, because it took me back to when I was a child. And if you've ever heard some of the previous podcasts, or you haven't, I used to actually be a little afraid of Papa Shango. Like when he had the green stuff coming out of the warrior's head. For me, that just felt so real. Once again, I mean, at this time, I'm a 9-10-year-old child. Kayfabe doesn't exist in my mind. To me, this is all real. Papa Shango is a voodoo witch doctor. And, he is putting curses and hexes on people. So PC and Papa Shango come out tonight. Absolutely phenomenal. The match itself, I mean, definitely nothing I would say to write home about. But once again, I don't think it's a case where you should have had a good match, especially with Papa Shango going up against Red Tyler. And this being when you're trying to get Papa Shango over as a heel and as a dominant heel. So, I mean, very short match. Papa Shango walks away victorious with the shoulder breaker. Absolutely loved it. From there, we cut to a promo of the El Matador. And man, just things are going off in my head. I'm like, oh my God, you remember this? You remember that? Like, boom, boom, boom. But with that being said, El Matador comes on his promo. He starts talking about he's not worried about any voodoos, any curses. No man is going to stop him from his quest to get to the top. So that was really cool. Really good throwback. Then we moved to, I don't want to say I cheesed out, but I started questioning myself as a child. Once again, going back to previous recordings we've had, or I'll just tell you now, I was a huge Tatanka fan growing up. I mean, the day this man lost for the first time to Ludwig, one of the worst situations in which a wrestler should have lost. I mean, definitely Tatanka should have won this match. And for me, this ultimately just killed Tatanka's push. But I'm watching him tonight, and I'm questioning myself. What were you seeing as a kid that made you love this man so much? Was it from the Indian war dance he would do around the ring? Which, looking at it now, it kind of looks like what they would do ceremoniously around a campfire. But I don't have Indian blood in me. I've never studied the Indians, so I don't want to go into, this is exactly what they were trying to reference. But it was just a little weird. Then not only while I'm watching it, the things I'm hearing. Now, today we live in a PG era. We have to be mindful of the things we say to the people we say to. And for me, I prefer non-PG, but society says something a little different. We're not here to talk about society. What we are here to talk about is Curt Hennig on the mic. Oh my goodness, the things that were coming out of his mouth, they would not fly today. I mean, there's one point where he's like, what's the difference between a brave and a chief? And he's like, the brave have 5 cars in their lawn, the chief has 10. I'm like, okay, that's not okay, man. So then we progress. And then we get a promo from Rick the Model Martel. Absolutely satisfying when I'm listening to this. But it's once again, he's cutting down the Indian heritage almost as a racist, with just racist comments. So it was a little crazy. Definitely thought it was very constructive. Definitely loved what I saw there. And then we get Tatanka winning against Brian Costello. The match itself, really nothing to write home about. Tatanka very dominant. The fun part is at the end. After the match ends, we get Rick the Model Martel coming out with his arrogant spray can, spraying all around the ring, just disrespecting Tatanka. Tatanka starts representing, what are you doing? Leave my people alone. Everything along those lines, which I gotta be honest, while rewatching it, cracked me up. As a little child, I would totally engage. I was totally on Tatanka's side. I mean, anything Tatanka would have did at the time, I was in for. But watching it again, once again, it just very cheesy, but I enjoyed it. But my favorite part comes when Rick the Model Martel spraying the arrogant spray around the ring. Tatanka starts walking away backwards, wafting in front of his nose, trying to get the smell away. He starts going up into the ring, and he sprays the arrogant spray into Tonka's eyes. And that's when it got so good. Because not only did Tatanka play it off amazingly, just it's burning. Refs come out from the back. They have to assist him to the back. Rick's just still doing his thing around the ring until he heads towards the back. But then when we cut, we actually get a backstage cut. And we see Tatanka with the doctors, them putting eye drops in his eyes and him just still reacting to the burning. God, I miss those days. Damn, but it was just done so well. I really enjoyed this. Not so much the match itself. What came after the match was just absolutely great. Then we get a Virgil spotting with a Virgil promo talking about how he's going to fight his way to the top. No one's going to stop him. For me, rewatching this, it totally made sense why Virgil just never panned out as one of your main superstars. He was always, to me, a B or a C tier level wrestler. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think Virgil wasn't great at what he did. It's just, I didn't think he was great dropping promos. And watching this promo just reassured that fact to me. So, definitely a callback. It's just so crazy, man, to see some of the people from now, or you see them now, then you look at them back then and you're like, whoa, man, what has time really done? Then we probably get my least favorite match on the card, which is Money Inc., Ted DiBiase, and IRS versus Ryan Cumberledge and Chris Hahn. Quick match. I mean, that was the thing about wrestling from the late 80s, 90s, is you had really quick matches. These matches were pretty much out there to show you how dominant the main superstars were, put them over, so when they got that head-to-head clash with another main superstar, it just built that much more height, that much more dominance behind what we were seeing. But I mean, real quick match, IRS hits a clothesline for the pin. Then we get Jimmy Hart coming in the ring with the makeshift tag team belts. I had read somewhere, before I had actually watched this match today, I had read somewhere that you could see already that there's no real chemistry between Ted DiBiase and IRS. And I gotta be honest, watching it, I felt the same exact way. There really wasn't any chemistry. Now is when we start to really hit the exciting points of the show for me. So we get a Macho Man interview after he just beat Ric Flair with Curt Hennig at ringside for the WWF title. Absolutely enjoyed it, man. I mean, seeing Mean Gene and Macho Man talk, if I watch one thing on a daily basis dealing with WWF, it is Macho Man promos. I absolutely love every Macho Man promo. The crazier and weirder he was in a promo, the better it was. Like when he's sitting there talking to Mean Gene, he's like, oh, all right, sorry, this is my best Macho Man voice, but he's like, oh yeah, Mean Gene. And he's just grabbing the coffee creamers. You see, Mean Gene, I'm the cream of the crop. I'm at the top. And he's just putting the coffee creamers in Mean Gene's pockets. And it is just so hilarious. If you guys have never seen a Macho Man promo from that time, go back and watch it. Macho Man has, I'm telling you, hands down, in my opinion, the best promos from that era. It was just everything. It was so creative. It was so constructive. Even though he looked crazy as shit while he's doing it, it was absolutely amazing. And it came across so well. So I really love this. Plus, it was just cool to kick into the superstars right after he had just won the title at WrestleMania. So, I mean, that was really exciting. Then we get the debut of High Energy. For those of you that don't know, High Energy was one of my favorite tag teams growing up. We're talking Koko B. Ware and Owen Hart. And I know a lot of people out there hate them, even say they felt there was never any chemistry between these two. But I always felt, as a child and still now rewatching it, that they had really great tag team chemistry. They were doing some things that tag teams at that time could only dream of. Not only that, it was so good to see Owen Hart so happy and full of joy and excitement. Later in his career, that's when he became the jealous Owen, jealous of Bret. Then he won the King of the Ring, so he proclaimed himself as the best heart in the world. And I'll never forget those days. But looking back and seeing Coco and Owen together, I was flabbergasted. I enjoyed every second of this match. It's Tony Bennett and Dwayne Gill versus High Energy. High Energy wins this match with the stereo missile drop kicks off the top rope from opposite corners. Coco goes up one side, Owen goes up the other. Owen lands his drop kick first. Coco actually drop kicks Dwayne Gill into Owen Hart. Owen Hart, thank God, slid out of the way at the right amount of time. But you can see on the replay, Owen did get clipped a little bit. High Energy gets the 1, 2, 3. For me, I mean, this is just one of those things where you just look back and like, God, I remember this, man. And even though I've always had a fear of birds, and yes, make fun of me if you want, I am terrified of birds. But I absolutely always wanted to get near Coco Beware with that parrot. I don't know, it's something about it. Or maybe it was a cockatoo. One of the two. But I always wanted to be next to it. And then seeing Owen and Owen's wearing them in this case. Later, they both wear the parachute pants. But to see Owen in the parachute pants with the checkerboards on the side, I mean, I was in absolute heaven. I couldn't be any more happier watching this match. And then we get our main event of the evening. The main event of the evening is Skinner versus the Ultimate Warrior. And sometimes you just forget the smallest things about wrestling right back then. So Skinner comes to the ring with chew in his mouth. Goes ahead, proceeds to spit at the Ultimate Warrior. But not only that, when the match actually kicks off and the Ultimate Warrior shoots him across into the turnbuckle, you see Skinner hit and you just see chew flying out of his mouth. Absolutely absurd. And my first thought, as corny as it sounds, my first thought is, damn, man, I hope this was like a Gallagher show where they at least gave the people in the front row plastic. Because I would not want to be one of those. I would not want to be one of the people who actually got spat on with that chew. Oh my God, I can only imagine how bad it smelled. And yes, I truly believe it was chew. Because remember, that was a totally different time era. I mean, hell, at that time, we still had smoking in actual venues. So it wouldn't have shocked me at all if it was real chew. But I mean, it goes the way that every Ultimate Warrior match at the time went. Under 2 minutes, Ultimate Warrior comes down to the ring, high octane, running around the ring, gets in, does a couple moves, hits a clothesline, shoulder tackle, hits a splash, Warrior walks away victorious. This for me was a little weird to watch. I remember as a kid, I really enjoyed the Ultimate Warrior. Was he my favorite wrestler? No. Was he even in my top 5 at the time? Not at all. I mean, you're talking about your Bret Hart, your Hogans. God, man, Tatanka, as I said earlier. So Ultimate Warrior wasn't on my top list. But I did enjoy the energy that the Ultimate Warrior always brought to the ring. Okay, regardless of what you want to say about his actual in-ring technician ability, the energy he brought to the ring was absolutely amazing. And I know people say he was hard to work with, he never wanted to put anybody over, yada, yada, yada. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about what we actually thought about the match. The match itself was good. I mean, it's literally how the Ultimate Warrior was being pushed at that time. And do I blame Vince? Not at all. He knew what he was doing. With that being said, though, after seeing this, it only made me look forward to the next episode of WWF Superstars. And you're saying, why? Well, first off, I really enjoyed watching WWFers at the time go against jobbers. Jobbers knew how to do their jobs. I think the problem with the WWE today, one of the problems they face, is how watered down it is. I don't want to see you fight your opponent for the pay-per-view 3 weeks in a row, 2 weeks in a row. What I would rather see is something like we did back in the day with the WWF, where they would face jobbers until we got to the point that it was time for the pay-per-view, and that's when they would go up against each other. Yes, they would come and distract during the other person's match. Typically, it would be the heel distracting the babyface. But I mean, for me, it always kept your wrestlers on top looking dominant. Okay, so it never made any doubts going into the match. At this point, I just think there's so many top tier superstars that the product's getting watered down. Who are the jobbers you're going to put on to put these other guys over? Okay, realistically, looking at the card, the first two jobbers I could think of off the top of my head, Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. Minus that, who's really jobbing for anybody? Weekly, we're seeing your top tier superstars losing matches. And I'm talking about the week of the pay-per-view. And I'm not talking, we're seeing baby faces lose matches due to a heel distracting. We're talking about your dominant heels losing matches. We're just talking about, I just think the product is saturated now. And that's the problem. But we will get into that more when we cover This Week in Wrestling. So, but with that being said, guys, that was fun. Thank you, Nick, for the idea. Definitely keep your eyes out. We will be back Saturday morning with This Week in Wrestling, where we will be covering Raw, SmackDown, and AEW. But with that being said, guys, thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch our video. God, it feels good to be back. Remember, always, forever, there's only one Click Pod. And you know what? We the best in the world. Laters.